It's exactly before you have to start. I will do a little countdown for you when we arrive around 15 seconds.
Yes, give me the green light. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One gadget from last year edition. Nothing this year.
And we are on 40 seconds before start. "15 seconds, 10, going in 5 seconds. Have a good one. Bye."
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to this session dedicated to the EIC Transition to Innovation activities. My name is Antonio Carbone. I work as National Contact Points at APRE in Italy. And I'm also project coordinator of Access2EIC, which is the European network of EIC National Contact Points, co-organizer with this session together with the European Commission. I will spend later in the end of this session a few words on Access2EIC, especially on a toolbox that we just released today, which is quite close to the topic of today, but about the objective of this session and to give you some context. Well, we know that the EIC aims at identifying, supporting the emerging of breakthrough technologies and innovation with the potential to scale up internationally. And with the aim also to become market leaders. And we know that the EIC, with a number of funding schemes, instruments, services, supports all the stages from R&D to demonstration, validation, up to the scale-up of startups and SMEs. Within this frame today, we will question ourselves on how transition to innovation activities should be a critical bridge for connecting deep tech research with market opportunities, how to ensure a coherent link between EIC Pathfinder and Accelerator, how to not stop at the level of generation of knowledge, how to go beyond the experimental proof of principle in the laboratory, how to address in a balanced way both technologies and market business dimension. Those are the topics to be discussed today. We'll do it with a panel of high-profile speakers. They will put on the table different backgrounds, different perspectives. Thank you so much to be here. I'm going to introduce you one by one in a while. And before leaving the floor to the first speaker, let me thank also the participants to this session. I would also invite them to, let's say, interact with us through the Q&A box, and I'll try to pick up some questions later and forward those questions to the speakers for a second round of questions. Well, I will start now with this first speaker, with the Commission, Mr. Timo Alantie, which is the head of unit of the Pathfinder EIC task forces under the DG Research and Innovation of European Commission. Timo, please tell us, not easy, no, but tell us what are the Commission ambition, vision, expectation on transition to innovation activities. I mean, this is a quite crucial stage for incubating, nurturing disruptive ideas. for ensuring the so-called seamless support, which is a quite ambitious and founding principle of the EIC. So Timo, the floor is yours. Thank you to be here.
Thank you, Antonio, for this introduction. It's great to be here, and I think it's a very interesting session we had up here, because the transition scheme, the transition type of project, is something brand new that we are putting in place with the EIC Pilot now, and next year with the Horizon Europe even more strongly. The whole logic here is need, as you said, a seamless support. I mean, if you go back to the framework program history, you know that there has been a tremendous amount of great discoveries, either in Future Emerging Technologies program or elsewhere in the framework program. But over the years, we have been constantly criticized that these discoveries, these new technologies didn't make it to the marketplace. And with the transition scheme, we are now trying to build a bridge between this type of technological programs towards what was also working very well in the framework program, which is the SME scheme, the SME instrument, where we were building up, let's say, entrepreneurial companies, taking new deep technologies to the market. But what we see that there was a sort of a gap between these two types of programs. I mean, the technologies as they come out from the research team and the research program were not quite ready yet to be put in a form of a business plan. Or maybe the technology was not really mature, actually, in these projects. So we need to have a new kind of an instrument which is taking almost ready-made technology, do the final steps there, whatever they might be. And I think this is a crucial point here, that there are several different pathways that are needed to take place. I mean, it could be early ideas of clinical trials in the biotech sector or medicines, or it could be certifications or medical validations, or further look at the customer base. What is it exactly that might be the case that the customer is looking for? So it should be a very versatile, tailor-made program that we are looking for there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Timo. Now it should be the turn of Anna Michaels-Valls, but I think we have to jump to the next speaker for the time being. So I will start now with Bo Svarer Hansen from B&H Power Consultants. Bo, you are, among the other things, of course, you have been recently involved in a transition to innovation activities project under the pilot of the EIC. It's quite at a preliminary stage, of course, but I would like to discuss with you about one of the points raised by Timo. Timo told us about a quite ambitious project, a challenging project by the Commission, of course, and I think that project governance and the next steps after this kind of project are quite crucial. So beyond the financial contribution, how it's possible to build the perfect synergies between the teams, the Commission, because we know also that the Commission hired some program managers, and the relevant environment stakeholders, early adopters of the technology. So how to concretely support the project, which is a collaborative project. It's a partnership towards the exploitation activities.
Okay. Yes. First of all, thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts. I think this is a complicated question, but I will try to break it down into simple answers. So I will start with the milestones. The key to success for any project is a team. I think that in this context, where there's a focus on creating a foundation for a successful business, EIC can learn from the way business angels think when they consider investing in a company. First, is solution to the customer's pain disruptive? 2, is the team experienced with good track record? 3, is the IP protection? 4, is a proof of concept? And 5, is a proof of business. The further down the list you can put check marks, the higher the value of the project and the lower the risk. Each point on the list has the same weight. I recommend that EIC build this list into the way they select and support projects. A successful startup will be strong on all 5 points. Therefore, any given project should deliver on as many of these points as possible. In my experience, there's never people with business background involved in university spin-outs. This usually means that there's a lot of focus on proving the technology and maybe obtaining IP, but not very much on customers and going to market. The EIC should strongly encourage the projects to set a team that covers all the aspects of starting and driving a business. In my own experience in Delight, the interaction between the researchers and the business people on the project team created an environment with a focus on product development like that of a business, and not the technology development focus that is often seen in purely technical teams. The role of the project team is, of course, to execute the project, but the EIC could take the role of challenging the project team if they have the right competences to bring the idea to the market. The competences need to change as the project develops. Maybe the first idea was not good enough, or an even better idea emerged that would require new competences, for example, new market knowledge. In my own case, in Delight, we started out looking for a business-to-business model, selling optical components to industrial players, and ended up deciding that prescription eyeglasses was the right market for us, which led us to enhance our team with a person with a deep knowledge from this field. Setting the right team is not easy, but EIC could cover some of the needs for market knowledge by providing coaching from experts with insight into the specific market. In addition to having market knowledge on the team, a good way to assure that the business idea is on solid ground is to demand that one of the work packages in the project cover interaction with potential customers regarding their perception of the product and its unique selling points, and that the feedback from the customers is reflected in the project. EIC could ask to have this customer feedback report in the early stage of the project, in time for the project to make use of the information. This interaction with potential customers might turn potential customers into first customers, which will trigger a check mark on point number 5 on the business angels valuation list, which is not a bad thing. So to wrap up my answer to the question, EIC should use the business angels valuation model to define milestones in the project, require that the teams include people with relevant business background, assure that the team have access to relevant market knowledge, require that the team talk to potential customers early in the project. I think this is the best way for EIC to support exploitation activities in the projects, on top of the money, of course. So that was my answer to the question.
Thank you so much, Bo. Straight to the point. I mean, you already list some takeaways and we took notes. So now let me make a step back and let me back to Anna, Mike's Vals. Anna, you, among the other things, Anna is also a member of the EIC advisory board, but it was a FET Pathfinder, FET at that time, beneficiaries. It was, and she was, and she's a successful entrepreneur. So, Anna, I wonder now how might be under the EIC frame, of course, how might be the most efficient routes to make the startup, maybe a startup emerging from a Pathfinder FET project, from a fundamental research project, a startup viable and self-sustaining after this grant period. Somebody already proposed also the possibility to create a light venture funds to create a company, as well as the EIC has done recently for the accelerator for later stages. So, on purpose, Anna, this is the question for you, and please bring your experience, your successful experience. You start from European project, now you have a very important company, high-tech company.
So, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. As you have said, Antonio, I consider myself a FET child, not only a FET child, but also a Horizon 2020 and the framework program. So our technology that I will show very fast, which is this cap, so people can, this cap that can either monitor or stimulate the brain. So for stimulation, we mean new therapies for diseases like epilepsy, depression, and others. This was all part of a framework program and a FET project. So we wouldn't be here without the support of FET. So that's why I accepted my role in the European Innovation Council Advisory Board, because I truly believe on basic science, as fed, open, really good research. But I really think we have a commitment in Europe to scale up companies and bring back money to the system by having successful companies. That's why I moved to the States 6 years ago. My company now is really successful. And to your question, what I try to bring to the EIC, I think we have a lot of talent in Europe. We have lots of good research. We are very entrepreneurial. We have a lot of startups. I think that what we are missing is scaling up companies. So to Bo's point, I think that we really need to make a business case and really make our companies, European companies, conquer the world, right? So I think there are several ways to do that. One is, of course, bring more business talent into this, research kind of transition. The other is bring money. I mean, you cannot scale up a company, bootstrapping. And that's what I think the United States has been doing systematically for years, right? Investing high risk in companies. So I think that's where the EIC can have a tremendous role. And many of the audience, if you don't know and you're entrepreneurs, there are a lot of opportunities. For the first time in history, the European Commission can directly invest in companies through the EIC and the blended mechanism. And what we want to cover in the EIC is maybe projects. I'm a woman, right? There are only 2% of all venture capital in the world goes to women CEO companies. What's that? This means that there are some inefficiencies in the capital markets that I do believe the EIC can cover, and also encourage investors to look at diversity, to look at countries that maybe you wouldn't expect to have such an amazing unicorns or scale-up companies. So I think that there is tremendous opportunity in untapping excellence and providing funding for companies to scale up. And we have to keep on funding FED and all these amazing projects, because that's the seed where these hopefully unicorns and scale-up companies will come from Europe.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you. Just a few minutes ago, if I'm not wrong, we had a session, specific session on some of the topics you mentioned, Anna, also on, let's say, women entrepreneurship and the kind of support that might be provided by European Commission. We know that also in the frame of the EIC and Horizon 2020, the Commission already did something quite concrete. I'm thinking about the, let's say, under the EIC Accelerator now, there is a special attention to women-led companies. I know also that the Commission is thinking about, to involve more and more the ecosystem, also the private investors ecosystems, to invest in women-led companies and so on. So this is one, of course, of the topic to be delved into. Now let me move on the, let's say, on the other side towards the experts, evaluator side. So let me introduce Isabel Obieta. Isabel, you are first of all an expert in the materials, microtechnologies for electronics fields, but you are also an expert of the Horizon 2020 framework world. You have been evaluator, for instance, of the recent Transition to Innovation Activities pilot call. So in view of Horizon Europe program, Isabel, to concretely, let's say, bridge research excellence with entrepreneurial ambition, what we can do, what the Commission can do, what will you expect to see or assess under the application in the future? Bo already told something, already gave some suggestions, so I would like to understand now your view.
Thanks, Antonio. Thank you very much for the invitation to this roundtable that allows me to share my thoughts about the evaluation of this transition to innovation pilot. But also, I think my experience as an innovation radar expert in several FET Open has been interesting also. So I would also like to share that with you. And finally, also, I would like to acknowledge a little bit my role, the role of the institution where I work. It's a technology center that we are all the time being asked about what do we do, the research we do for, and who's going to buy it and all that. So that's also been important in my, let's say, my background. So my experience in this evaluation of the Transition to Innovation pilot, the first thing I would like to highlight is that there were amazing ideas, so very interesting things and great teams in there. there was an issue that for me was important, and I think probably the Commission was not asking properly on some of the questions, especially for me, many of the proposals, they lack on really explaining a phase for design and development of a product or a minimum viable prototype. I think Bo already mentioned about it. It's different to just describe what you need to do in terms of prototype and what you need to do in terms of building a product that could somehow approach the market so that someone is interested in that. And that for me was mainly the main issue, that sometimes it was failing in many of the proposals that were in this evaluation. So there was great analysis on many things. There was great R&D proposed. There were also other things like approaching networking and all that. But sometimes the product was not there, was not ready, and there were not specific test steps to reach that product and to approach the market with that product. For me, I think that should be much better asked for in the next call. For me, that was the main issue. There were other issues, like, for example, what the technology readiness level of the maturity of the processes proposed. Sometimes it was not well explained, and well, that was important, but probably it was not as important and as really trying to reflect what you want to do to approach the market. What's your product? What's your competitive advantage with your product? And that, I think that we need to reinforce for the next time. So I was mentioning my experience as innovation radar, because I think it's very important. At this point for me, it has been very important. So my feelings are a little bit contradictory. When we jump into a review meeting of an ongoing project and try to extract exploitable results and to challenge the consortium to find them and understand if they are protectable, etc., well, believe me, it's difficult. It's usually very difficult, and sometimes it's even a little bit deceiving. In general, this part of the meeting is left for the end. It takes less than 1 hour, and we're not prepared for that. So I think a process where the consortium is asked to think about what is their product, what is going to be in the future. Of course, it's very interesting what they are doing in terms of research, but what do you envisage as a final product? What you are really trying to solve? So what's the problem you are trying to solve? And who is your competition in terms of what's your advantage? Are you better in terms of the process is much cheaper? It's going to be much cheaper. Is it going to be a portable device? It's going to have a higher sensitivity. What's really your advantage? And those questions are, I think, it's fundamental that we ask people, but not in a 1 hour suddenly session. I think that has to be done like a close follow-up in the whole meeting. I'm not sure if this role of the program manager is going to take this into account. I'm not sure what they are going to do, but I'm pretty sure that this role or a similar one should be there, with people that have the technical domain to challenge a research project, but they could also think about the application of the need they are trying to solve and help the consortium in that sense. For me, those questions related to what problem do you want to solve? How are you going to solve it? What's the process you need to scale up? What's your final prototype that you want to build? This, I think, should be in the next transition to innovation application proposals. For me, those are the core thing. There are other issues like what is going to be exploited and how, but of course, many times those are there. And also there's another point which I think in the last transition to innovation process, there were several people related to IP, and they were really missing the IP strategy. I think at least a review of the patents, a small freedom to operate initial analysis, I think it would help also to understand the competitive advantage, and if they have the place where they could play with the final product they want to develop. So I think those are the main ideas I wanted to share with you, and afterwards maybe I can go further into some details. But thank you, Antonio.
Thank you, Isabella. You mentioned in the end the IP, let's say IP strategy, the freedom to operate analysis, which is also one of the main assets also to, let's say, set up a first business model and then commercialization strategy. And that's why I now introduce also the last speaker, last but not least, of course, for this round, Pascal Auger. We are going up in terms of technology readiness level because now we move, and I leave the floor to an expert, an evaluator of the EIC Accelerator. And my question for you, Pascal, is you evaluate, you assessed several EIC Accelerator pilots, several EIC Accelerator applications, companies, and startups. In terms of lessons learned, and if we consider, let's say, a transition to innovation project, in the end of this project, it should be ready at least to launch as startups, or the SMEs, the startups already partner of this transition to innovation activities should be ready to apply for the EIC Accelerator. So the high-flying companies are the target of the EIC Accelerator. And what do you think, how those transition stage should prepare startups, SMEs, spin-offs to leap to the accelerator? So in terms of proof of concept, business model, and so on, what do you expect? What would you expect from a transition to innovation project?
Okay. Good afternoon, first of all, and I'm really pleased to be with you today. And I thank, of course, the organizer for inviting me to contribute to this exciting panel. I was involved in the cutoff, for instance, of March 2020 and the Horizon 2020 to evaluate COVID-19 related proposal. And I was an expert evaluator within a jury of 6 expert evaluators, with the particularity to have technological, business, commercial, manufacturing, regulatory, and financial experience, leading to the ability to really set up a comprehensive approach of each proposal from SMEs. What are my lessons learned from that, and what are the tricky points? Really, the evaluation and what is important to put in the proposal and to bring as a company is based on 3 major pillars. The first pillar is really about the capability of implementing really the project within the company. And of course, and it has been said also by Bo, as even at an earlier phase of the project, the team is absolutely key. And here, it's the capability and the motivation of the team. And at this stage of development, most of the companies that we have seen were most of them were more than 3 to 4 years old. Some of them were older than that. And really regarding the team, the point is to really bring a multidisciplinary and comprehensive team covering all aspects and skills, from development competencies to manufacturing, regulatory, depending on the field, of course, commercial, of course, but also financial skills, including a demonstrated ability to raise funds, and if possible, a track record according to related to that. Really, the second pillar covers the potential impact of the company. And of course, behind that, we cover the commercial strategy, and we carefully reviewed the business model. It's not just an idea, it's a reality at this stage. The proposed commercial strategy has to be part of the proposal, the financing planning and the projection, as well as the whole coherence of the different aspects. The IP strategy is analyzed, including the freedom to operate when appropriate. And at this stage of development, the scalability of the technology and the manufacturing aspect, including supply chain, are also deeply reviewed and discussed with the team. The market access strategy is of course a must-have, and in a really bottom-up approach, not just having part of X million market share. The position of the project with respect to the competition is really key as well, and has to be submitted in the proposal, even though the jury can look for additional information if needed. And the work package in the proposal are really assessed one by one to check the alignment between the task, the corresponding financing, and the overall project. The third pillar is related to excellence and more particularly to the feasibility of the ID. And here the ID is the degree of novelty, the disruptiveness of the innovation, in order either to potentially to create a new market or to make a significant impact on existing market. And the timing of innovation is also really discussed with respect to market readiness. The link with the transition phase is really that EIC Accelerator start at TRL 6 and above. And the assessment of the TRL is really performed carefully, and the stage of development of the proposal then is really a key asset for the project and also for the company, meaning that it has to come to more and more mature company. Basically, the EIC Accelerator is between TRL 6 and 9, TRL 6 and 8 for a grant, and TRL 9 if equity is included. And it is really important then to put into the proposal and also in the presentation for the interviews all the data, the proof of concept, and all type of achievements that have already been performed before. If I can give one or two examples, for a diagnostic solution, for instance, it is important that the company has already obtained a fully operational prototype, a full preclinical package, and a demonstration in an operational environment, such as an hospital, for instance. If we go to therapeutic product or vaccine, basically my major field of experience is human health, and you all understood that. Then the stage of development corresponding to TRL 6 to 8 is clinical phase, demonstrating safety and efficacy, meaning that prior to that, all preclinical full package with IND submission included is an important aspect that is allowed by the transition EIC solution. Manufacturing is always very important to prepare. Most of the companies I have been in contact with are really good at proof of concept, going into clinic, for instance, but manufacturing prototype at a non-distributable scale is often something missing, which is a strong aspect as well of the EIC Accelerator. And last but not least, what is important is that EIC Accelerator support SMEs that could not necessarily be supported by a classical investor. We come to this very tricky but very important aspect of the non-bankability of the proposal. And with the idea basically, and we have seen that in a couple of projects, is really that the company has to demonstrate that they went to VCs, to a business angel, or that already try to get some type of investors if they need it in the business model. And they bring us the feedback why it was not successful or not enough successful to match the next step, which is one important and key step in their development. And in that case, they can be considered as non-bankable, and then the EIC Accelerator support them in equity to move forward. And I think it is a very important aspect of this EIC Accelerator compared to lots of different forms of support to innovation. I mean, EIC Accelerator support the company even in equity when others are not ready to do it, meaning that it's really an add-on and a must-have to support our company to develop properly. And I think it was most of my suggestion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks. We are in the end of the first round. We have still 15 minutes, so I will pick up some questions from the floor, from the audience. I can see a couple of questions, so I also invite again participants from home, from office, to raise other points, other questions. Let me start from Francesco Chienzi. Ciao, Francesco. Francesco say, okay, basically we are talking about technology transfer stage. If we consider the Pathfinder or the previous FET project, well, many times in the reality, the results might transit also to existing SMEs or large companies rather than going through startups, okay? So this is, I think, actually a question for the Commission, but Timo, I will leave the floor to you in the end of this second session to make some conclusion. I also see you are taking some notes, so I will leave the floor in the end. But this is the question also for the other speakers. I mean, what do you think? Also, the large industrial patenting and licensing to other SMEs, to industry might be a route, or in the sense, in the principle of the EIC, maybe to set up, to launch a startup, a spin-off might be more meaningful for the basis of the EIC? First question. The second one, I leave the floor to you right now. I can see one anonymous raising up an important point, because, I mean, how to build a multidisciplinary team from a research group towards a company. So how to build the skills if you are, let's say, aware about good practices in your countries, in your region, or overseas, and so on, nationalism. So let me start from Bo again, and then Anna, Isabel, and Pascal. Let me start with Bo about the last question, Bo, on, let's say, good example, good practices on how to, let's say, support researchers in building up a multidisciplinary team, a company, and so on.
Okay, I can use myself as an example. I like to work with startup companies. So I was, you can say, the recent startup I'm working with just came. I went to the university. I talked to my friends at the university and said, okay, what are you doing? Do you guys do something interesting? And they said, oh, look at this case, and what do you think? And if you like it, why don't you help us along with it? And that's how we got started on this, what turned out to be the Delight project first, and now the Odyssey. And I think that at least in Denmark, there are a lot of people like me. Maybe we should. They don't know that a lot of people that would like to work with startups, but maybe they don't know how to get in contact with the research groups and so on. And because I did a startup before university spin out, so it was part of my network. So that was just, you can say, a practical way of making that happen. And then when we needed to get more market knowledge, I was just, again, using my network and say, okay, I need to find somebody who knows something about this, because I don't know, no one else on the team does. So, but I know it's important, and then go out in the network and say, okay, we find somebody who would have the passion to join this team and to make it work. So I think it's just, I don't think that it's fixed all, but that's, you can say, a practical way of saying, okay, that's how I did. That's how we did.
Thank you so much. Isabel, I don't know, Anna, are you there? And I don't know if you heard the questions from the audience, Anna. If not, in the meantime, Isabel, the floor is yours. Also, Philippe from the chat raised a similar questions about, let's say, the team.
Yes, I think for sure team is a key point also here. It's a key point to have a team multidisciplinary with people that know about business, that are able to understand the market and link those to the researchers. That's not so easy, of course. Yeah. And well, I can only talk about my experience in as I said, in Tecnalia, where we have a multidisciplinary teams working together. We have what we call Tecnalia Ventures, that also tries to link us with right market people. But in fact, as I said, the whole organization runs around trying to be close to the market. So I think we are all trying to put our mindsets to be very close to the market. It's not so obvious for us to start spin-offs, to startups, to go for these startups. I think some years ago we were going for that, but now our main way of doing it is more trying to license, to protect what we are doing and license those to industrial partners. So we like very much to work in projects together with with the end users, with whom is going to take care of exploiting it, and from the beginning trying to develop together with them those ideas. So that's what I was trying to somehow to transmit, that sometimes when you from the beginning you have someone asking you, what is your market, what are you going to really sell, why is it important? So sometimes the output of that is not directly a spin-off. Sometimes it's just that the market is ready to just catch it up and take profit of what you've done. So you need to have your license ready to be able to exploit what you have done. So I think that the team, of course, is important, and asking those questions in the team is the question in there. Yeah.
Thanks. There are a couple of questions from Carol Miranda, especially the first one, Pascal. I think it's for you. It's about, since we are talking about breakthrough innovation, breakthrough technologies across the value chain, across the several EIC funding schemes, and also under the EIC Accelerator, at least currently the no bankability concept, you mentioned it, is quite crucial, is central. So what's your perception, what's your feeling here? And then there is another question, maybe more for Timo in the end of the session, about let's say differences between, not so easy maybe, but between breakthrough innovation and breakthrough technologies. I'm not a professor, of course, but okay. Let's start from Pascal about no bankability.
Okay, if I can just add just a few words around the team of the previous question before going to bankability. For me, as a director of a tech transfer office, there is two levels in terms of team. There is the founders of the company, and there is the management and operational people that are to be hired. The very tricky aspect is how to find a co-founder with experience in another field compared to the researcher who is very famous in his own field. And I think that's the most difficult to find. And it's not just a question of finding somebody who has competencies in financials, for instance. Then it cannot be your brother-in-law, clearly. So sometimes it's still something that we see. But no, it has to be somebody that a scientist can respect, consider at the same level as he is, with respect to his own field of experience. And the very complex point, very complex topic is to put this very preliminary team together, and then from that build the other skills that are required for a fully multidisciplinary team. Now, with respect to and a lot of TTOs have worked on that around in Europe, putting in place what we call entrepreneur in residence. Now there are a lot of managers that have already previous experience, and that can be of help to create and develop startups. Now, if we come back to the non-bankability, if we consider cutting-edge technologies, sometimes it can, investors, most of the time it's highly capitalistic, and it can frighten a couple of investors to start to invest in this type of disruptive technology company. And that's exactly the role where EIC Accelerator is for, because they will be not only finance and give money in terms of grant, but also support an equity part up to 15 million, and then be the first investor of the company, demonstrating the trust in the technology, demonstrating the trust in the team and the approach, and then securing the later investment by more traditional investors. I think, and it's really and I think it's one of the biggest advantage of EIC Accelerator from my point of view.
Thank you so much. Timo, in the next 3 minutes, you're asked to make a kind of wrap up. There is also, I don't know if it's already the case to elaborate on it. There is also a question on plug-in, I don't know, and fast track under Horizon Europe. I don't know if we can already say, if you can already say something on it, or it's better to wait for the, let's say, development of negotiation. But please, the floor is yours.
Yes, I would like to take the question from Carol Miranda first, which is very interesting there about this EIC Accelerator is looking for technology breakthrough or innovation, or whether the technology breakthrough is something we should consider in the transition, because this allows me to come back to really explain what we are trying to put, let's say, the instruments together in the EIC as of next year. So the transition projects which we are putting to place is exactly when you are in this situation which Pascal was, for example, referring, that you don't have the minimum viable product, you are not quite sure about who the customers might be, your technology is kind of proven, but not yet quite clear how that will be turned into a product or service or the likes. So, and maybe it actually requires even further research work. So because you didn't really talk to your customers yet, so when you go there, you realize your specifications are not mature enough. So that's where the transition type of a project is the right instrument, where really we are looking for more projects where there is a balance between getting it market ready and getting it technology ready. So you need to probably work both hand in hand. And then once your project or the let's say the vision of your product becomes more mature, once you start to have a business plan, once you are able to start presenting your case in such a way that you can start calculating return on investments and all these kind of things, you can move into the accelerator. But probably there are many projects where it's still not ready for private investors because it's so breakthrough, it's so new that they are very hesitant to take the risk. And that's why we are having the accelerator scheme, and also, like Pascal was presenting, the additional capital investment there. So it really depends on how mature your case is. I would also like to come back to the underlying team that I hear from all the panelists, actually, and that's the importance about the team. And I really think that this is the essence from the Commission point of view. If you take really the research project, they are really researcher dominant. That's not a surprise to anybody, but it's very important for all those researchers who made the breakthrough to open up the mind and let other people into the project when you move to the EIC Transition and Accelerator projects. Nobody forces researchers to become entrepreneurs here. If you want to do it, that's fine, but you can also, step back and continue your research and take other people into the team, allow, let's say, these projects to be the place where you bring them in. And to that end, we have made it very flexible. So in the transition scheme, in the accelerator scheme, if you had a research project funded, you don't have to have the same legal entities there. You can bring new legal entities. If you needed to create a startup, if you needed to create a spin-off, you can pass it on to new legal entities. Or if you are really still thinking about it, you could even enter as a private individual. So if you, for example, want to become the entrepreneur maybe in the future, but creating the company is not yet the step you want to do, you could come in as a private individual in these projects. So we tried to make it very flexible, so that at the exact point that people were saying here, that you can build a team around that, we are flexible from the Commission side, so that you can build in the expertise that you need to have in the case.
Thanks, Timo. Thank you so much. Anna, you came back, so I would say there is a last question for you. If you can see the chat, there is David. Still, let's say, on the team. I will ask you, based on your experience, the experience of your company, how to, David asked about the evaluation process, but basically, and more in general, how did you solve this question? So a team of researchers set up a companies, and now it's a startup, and now it's a successful company. So how to build up the team, how to collect different skills and expertise. What do you think? Yeah. What's your experience?
Yeah, I was listening to you all the time, so apologies you didn't see me, but I was following the conversation. In our case, in Neuroelectrics and in Starlab, from the very beginning, we had two co-founders. One was a pure scientist, a physicist and mathematician, and I come from the business discipline. So I think that this is part of the success, because through the years, I have learned to become much more of a scientist in terms of understanding that research takes time, and that my team cannot develop a product in 5 days. You have to be patient for deep tech, for breakthroughs. You have to really hold the horses there, because it takes a lot of time to develop something novel and a lot of money. But also the researchers have become more business, in the sense that they understand that, we cannot live on grants, and maybe there are minimal viable products that you can launch into the market. So I think that, science at heart, but business on the practice side has made us a successful company. And we were born like that, with the two cultures. And I adore science, but I really like the business side. So my recommendation to researchers would be to partner with people that are not like them. It's just, in order for a company to succeed, you have to mix cultures. So if you're too research-oriented, if you're too business-oriented, you will not succeed. So I think you really need to make these multidisciplinary teams. And I think that I don't agree with researchers only being focused on research. I work with a lot of researchers, and when they see something that they research being used in a hospital, curing a kid, having an impact, they glow. So I don't know why we put these borders, because I think that the researchers, they want to have an impact, and business, ethical business in the right way, follow the same. So I don't know why we keep on forcing ourselves to build these, I think, artificial borders. We just have to be ethical in whatever we do, but we are all going under the same goal.
No borders, this is the final message. And since we are the last session of today, if I'm not wrong, and since there are 2 questions more, I think we can take a bit longer than scheduled. And Timo, there are 2 questions for you. The first one, I think it's simple to reply. The fast track to innovation remain in Horizon Europe? Maybe no. Mike?
Yes. So the fast track to innovation is not something that we are planning to continue next year in the Horizon Europe. I think if you look at what is being discussed for the EIC, we are opening up the participation in the transition and the Pathfinder phases to these type of projects. So I would say it's rather embedded into the whole set of schemes. And one thing which is an underlying principle also in the whole setup of the EIC, we want to limit the different number of instruments to make it very easy and clear to the applicants, so that you have very clear modules, very clear calls, and in that sense we embedded and included the FTI into the other instruments actually.
Thank you. And very, very last questions. Can we consider the new transition to innovation activities a kind of new phase 1 of the previous SME instrument? Okay, you replied with the phase. And the last one, really promised. Is it possible for an SMEs apply for the transition call, even if they have not been funded under a FET project before, and if in the future they will not apply for the accelerator, but who knows about the future?
Yeah. So first of all, the transition phase, I wouldn't say that it's exactly replacing the SME instrument phase 1. It's something slightly different. It's allowing a bit more serious take on the research. It's a bit more versatile instrument than the phase 1. But some of the elements, that if that's what you needed to do, could be probably done in a transition project that some cases SMEs were doing in the phase 1. So it's something slightly different and slightly new, and part of the building on the experiences there. Now, whether an SME can apply, so let's see a little bit what we end up publishing in the calls. We have to be a little bit careful in how widely we open the program. Depends also on the budget discussions. As you know, in the pilot this year, we piloted the transition call. There we limited it to those type of results that were coming from a previously funded FET projects. So that was a good way for us to keep the success rates for the applicants at a reasonable level. We do have an ambition to make and open up this phase more. But in any case, the principle which we have found is that we never require the same legal entity being there. It's more a question about the result coming from somewhere. So, for example, if an entrepreneur finds a very interesting result in a university and wants to discuss with the research group and wants to turn that out into a business, and that result was coming from previously funded projects, it would be okay to that SME to come to an agreement and submit the proposal, and even maybe that original team could be present or wouldn't even have to be present if the transition was taking place. So we are focusing on the team rather than the legal entities again there. But let's come to back this once we are finalizing the discussions on the call and the content on the work program there. And I think we're probably going to be a bit more restricted in the beginning and then open up the whole program as we move on, and the confidence level with these new instruments grows.
Thank you, Timo. So we can arrange another session like this one in a couple of months. Okay.
Absolutely. We have to come back to the details for sure.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Timo. Before leaving, I will spend 30 seconds. Have a look to the chat box. You will find out a couple of links to the Access2EIC website. Why? Because just today, with the network of EIC national contact points, we released a kind of toolbox which is focused on setting up on how to set up a business coming out from research. The aim is to help researchers to frame better their way to market. So we think it will be very useful also in the context, of course, of the EIC transition to innovation activities. As national contact points, of course, we are fully available to go into details. Time is running out now. So first of all, let me thank all the speakers for the precious contribution today, all the participants. I hope you have enjoyed these 45 minutes, something more, 53, 54 minutes together. And I wish you all a nice evening, and see you tomorrow with the third and last days of the R&I days. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.